Standing in the dank shelter, listening to the storm rage outside, Finn waited. Drenched from head to toe, the icy water chilled him to his bones. Hail and rain crashed down on the metal door, pop, 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 like a cascade of marbles falling from the sky. Outside, it sounded as though a freight train was passing by. Finn's ears popped from the pressure. In need of a distraction, he turned on his flashlight and searched the shelves behind the stairs. 2 old MREs and a couple of jars of preserves, covered in mold. He shook one, then placed it back down. Examining further, he discovered 3 mason jars, covered in cobwebs, hidden on the bottom shelf. Smirking, he lifted one, wiped it off, and held his flashlight against the glass, showing off the clear liquid inside. "Well, at least this day isn't a total loss," Teague quipped. Finn popped the seal and opened the jar. He smelled the contents and flinched. "Smells like paint thinner." Teague took a sniff, then cringed. "Man, what? That means it's good." Finn raised the glass to his friends. "To Zach, our corn-fed country boy and his ridiculous strength." He took a large drink. The clear liquid warmed the inside of his mouth, burning as it went down his throat and into his belly. "How is it?" asked Teague. "Tastes like it smells," Finn gasped as he passed the jar. "It burns." Teague raised the glass to his friends. "Bonne santé." Then he took a swig and passed it to Cash. "You gonna take a pull?" Zach asked impatiently. Cash nodded. I will. Let's just wait a minute. See if they die." "They're good. Give it here," Zach said, as he snatched it from Cash. He raised the jar in the air. "To found whiskey, the best kind there is." 2 hours passed. The storm dissipated. Finn wasn't sure when the sirens stopped screaming, but he was thankful it did. The alcohol helped to stave off the chills. Buzzed and feeling antsy, he was ready to get out. He climbed the ladder and peeped outside. The rain continued to fall at a steady pace. No wind and no hail. He crawled out of the shelter and ambled up to the back porch, picking up a rusty metal tub along the way. "I can't believe this old place is still standing," he said as he tossed the tub onto the wood floor. Soaked to the bone, he took off his wet pants and shirt and draped them over what remained of the railing. River disappeared into the house. She returned a moment later, wearing a gray and black flannel shirt. In her arms, she carried her wet clothes and 3 blankets. She tossed one blanket at Teague, another at Zach, then hung her clothes on the railing, and wrapped the other blanket around her shoulders as she sat down. Finn walked inside in search of anything dry to burn. He returned with a pile of scrunched-up newspaper and small bits of wood, placing them in a heap in the center of the metal tub. He looked around at the others. "Anyone got a lighter or anything?" he asked. Teague handed him a flintstone. Once again, the moonshine proved useful. After taking a swig, he doused the paper with the pungent-smelling liquid with his bowie knife. He struck the stone, causing bright yellow sparks to fly. After a few strikes, a wisp of smoke rose from the pile of paper. He leaned close and blew on the fledgling flames, coaxing them to life. In no time at all, a warm fire illuminated everyone's faces in an orange glow that waved and flickered like a belly dancer. Finn leaned back against Teague, who wrapped the blanket around them both. At last, a moment of calm. He listened to the rain falling on the metal roof as he basked in the fire's warmth. He closed his eyes and relaxed. In the house, a phone chimed. "Ain't mine. My battery's been dead for at least a week," said Zach. "Mine died the other day," replied Teague. Finn shook his head. River shrugged. "I suppose it's mine then." Cash walked inside. A moment later, he emerged, staring at the tiny screen in his hand. Guys, something's up." Apprehension buzzed through Finn's body as he waited for more information. "Gunnar wants us to get onto the server," continued Cash. He lifted his phone in the air. "I don't have a good connection." Finn stood up. "Hand it here." He climbed on the railing and reached above the roof. The signal was not strong enough. He typed a message to let Gunnar know about the issue. The phone chimed with a response. "All right, I can fill you in via text." Finn climbed down and sat beside Teague. Anxiety washed over him while he waited. No one said a word. A moment later, the phone chimed again. Finn read the message aloud. There was a fire at the Austin Hotel a few weeks ago. The whole building burned to the ground. Several riders died inside. He halted reading. "Christ!" He stared at the screen in disbelief. Realizing the others were staring at him, he waited. Finn glanced up. Cyrus and Craig were in the house. Looks of shock swept over the faces of his friends, as the reality of what Finn was telling them took hold. Like a movie playing in slow motion, images of Cyrus and Craig flooded his mind. Cyrus with his big, muscular frame, his warm, friendly smile. Craig with his signature cocky grin. "Are they okay?" River asked. her voice quaking. He shook his head. According to Gunnar, they didn't make it out. He blinked a tear from his eye and turned his focus back to the phone in his hand. Is this real? He typed. Yes, replied Gunnar. Finn typed. How do you know it was them? He stared at the tiny screen, biting his nails as he waited. Teague put his hands over Finn's and pulled it away from his face. Ordinarily, this would irritate him, but this time, he was too numb to care. The phone chimed with Gunnar's response. They sent me a text a few weeks ago saying they were stopping overnight at the Austin squat. They wanted to know if anyone else was nearby. I heard nothing from them after that. As Gunnar typed more, Finn conveyed the latest bits of information. The phone chimed, and Finn read aloud, Porter got wind of a major fire in an old abandoned farmhouse outside of Austin. He did some digging, and confirmed it was the Ryder squat. Yesterday, he posted on the server to see if any of us were in that area around that time. That was when I told him that Cyrus and Craig were there. He did some more digging and found out that 2 of the unidentified bodies they found in the debris fit their descriptions. The bodies were burned too badly for proper identification, so they sent them off to a local mortuary for immediate cremation. Finn shook his head. His heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to yell or punch something. He typed another question. Are you sure it's not a mix-up? Gunnar responded. Have you heard from either of them lately? It's like they dropped off the face of the earth. I haven't heard a word from them since that night. It's them. When you get a chance, Porter posted the official reports with all the details on the server. You can read it all there. Finn wiped his eyes, then typed, What happened to their bodies? Gunnar responded, The fire burned so hot there wasn't much left. The county sent the remains they could identify along to their relatives. They stored the unidentified ashes at a county mortuary on the outskirts of the city. Finn waited as Gunnar typed more. The others already know. We chatted about it over the server. You guys have been out of touch for a while. We need someone to go there, collect the remains, then bring them back down to Stoney's, where we can hold a proper memorial. Finn relayed the info to his friends, then responded, Count us in. Who's going to get the ashes? The phone chimed. That's what we're trying to figure out, replied Gunnar. We're all in transit, trying to make our way to Texas. Where are you? Teague leaned close. What's he saying? Someone needs to go get the ashes. Finn's heart raced in his chest. He sighed and said, We're the closest group, which means it's on us. You up for that? Finn shrugged. We don't have any choice. Cash spoke up. You know, we don't have to do it if you don't want to. Some of the others could do it, or Zach and I can go get the ashes, then meet back up with you guys somewhere else. Finn shook his head. We can do it, as a group, he said, struggling to hide his anxiety. You sure? You sure? Asked River. I said we can do it, he snapped. Finn typed a message on the phone. We're outside of Tulsa. We'll get their ashes and meet up with y'all in Terlingua. The phone lit up with a response from Gunnar. I realize this is difficult for you. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't necessary. Nate and I are already heading down. If you run into any trouble, give us a shout and we'll come running. Okay, typed Finn, before putting the phone down. Teague leaned over his shoulder. You sure you're going to be okay? Finn nodded, but he wasn't sure. A sense of cold dread washed over him. Why did it have to be Austin? He spent years running from that place. He vowed he would never go back. Never say never. Finn stared into the flames, his mind blank. First thing in the morning, they were catching a ride south. Pitch black, eyes open wide, searching. Darkness. The sound of muffled voices echoed around him. Something heavy held him down, suffocating. Panic bubbled up inside. He lay there paralyzed, a scream trapped in his throat. Finn woke up with a start, breathing heavy, hair damp with sweat, unsure of his surroundings. Slowly he realized he was in the shabby room of a decrepit farmhouse. The room was dark. It was the middle of the night. He stared up at the ceiling and wiped his eyes. Isolation and stark, cold fear washed over him. He reached out to touch Teague, then withdrew his hand. Afraid to close his eyes, he crept out of the room and sat outside on the old porch. The cool night air was a welcome change. Leaning forward, elbows resting on his knees, he covered his face with his hands and wept.